It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jonas Rajanto, um, but I speak to Jonas in Swedish and Jonas in English as well. Um, let's talk about how to organize productive online and hybrid meetings. Um, while I tell you who I am, I'm curious who you are. Who's here today? Could you let me know in the chat, where are you connecting from? Where are you connecting from today? And maybe just in one or two words, why are you here today? What are you here to learn? Why were you interested in signing up for this? So a few words about who's speaking. So I'm a facilitator and trainer at Grape People. And before this job, I was an ICT consultant and an ICT expert. So my background is in computers, but the older I get, the more interested I seem to get in how people work instead, and especially how people work in groups. And so that's what Great People is specialized in, how people collaborate effectively, and how we can design all of our meetings in a way that it feels like people can participate in a meaningful way. So they're not wasting time. They feel like they're participating for a reason, and they can actually contribute something. So we help by organizing tailored trainings, and then we do consulting as well. Here are some pictures of our people, in room before the pandemic and then during the pandemic. And of course, now we're going into hybrid and trying to combine the two, which is not easy. That's what we're here to talk about today. So the question I thought I would focus on today is how to organize meetings that inspire and engage, because this seems to be harder and harder as time goes on. The more meetings you have in your calendar, the harder it is to become inspired or engaged by any one meeting. We tend to multitask, and we are never really fully present in any meeting unless the meeting leader is especially good. So what does an especially good meeting leader do? Let's first look at some of the common signs. Maybe you can recognize some of these. How do meetings fail? Not just hybrid meetings, but any meeting, face-to-face, virtual. Multitasking is one of the most common things. So maybe you deliver a presentation and then you ask people, what are your thoughts? No one says anything. And you're wondering, did they even listen? Are they doing something else? And then if you ask a specific person, they're like, sorry, I missed the question. Could you ask the question again? And now you're wondering if they even listened to the entire previous discussion. Monologues is another problem. So one person or just a few people out of the entire group dominate the discussion for most of the meeting, and you don't really have any opportunity to speak if you're not one of the most extroverted people, not one of the most confident people, not one of the most senior people, because those are the ones that usually get the floor, even though maybe we would require or at least hope for everyone's wisdom in the discussion. The goal is unclear. I'm 45 minutes into a 60-minute meeting and I'm still wondering, what are we talking about and why are we talking about it? What is the goal here? Or even if the goal is clear, it seems like there's really no plan. It's just the conversation is organic, and I'm not sure when we are reaching a conclusion, what kind of conclusion we are supposed to reach in the time that we've reserved. So it just seems like we're going based on intuition and there's no plan. But of course, the worst part is that the goal is not reached, right? Maybe due to all of these other things, we feel like, I've spent most of my time in meetings, I still haven't accomplished anything. If we do one more thing in the chat, could you tell us what is currently your number one struggle in hybrid meetings, if that's what you came here to learn about, or remote meetings? Either one may be your focus, but tell us, what is your number one struggle? I'm going to read through your answers for just a couple of minutes. I see a lot of people have already answered. Maybe you're still thinking about your answer, but at least I hope I got you to think about the answer, right? I got you to think about what is the number one struggle and how would you phrase it. Before I go ahead, I'd like to put you into breakout rooms. I hope that's okay with you. This wasn't in the agenda, but I hope you're in a place where you could discuss with one participant or two participants. If you are in a bad place and you can't discuss, maybe you can still participate through the chat. But I was thinking, let's spend 4 minutes discussing this in small groups. What is this struggle? Maybe you can learn something about one of your colleagues or co mm, what do we co-leaders, co-meeting leaders, right? So I will send you into groups of 3 for 4 minutes. If you haven't ever done this before, maybe you have, but just to be on the safe side, I'll say what's going to happen is when I press open all rooms, you'll automatically move into a breakout meeting with one or two other people. And after 4 minutes, they're going to close automatically. And so I'd just like you to talk about this. What is your struggle? What problem are you trying to solve? And then we'll resume with the presentation. Let me check that the settings are okay. Automatically move and open all rooms. So good luck. I hope everything goes well. All right, to everyone else, I hope you had a good discussion. Just to be on the safe side, I will press mute all so that no one was left unmuted. And what I usually do after something like this, when I send people to discuss, I ask a few people, what did you discuss? And then maybe I before I even start my presentation, I want to generate a general, like a shared interest, a shared focus. What should we talk about that concerns everyone? Today, the time is a bit short and the group is a bit big, so I won't do that. But just to let you know, if we had a group of, let's say, 10 people, I would ask 2 or 3 people, what did you discuss? And then we would, I would let you participate in the presentation. But the main concerns I picked up from your replies or responses in the chat was concentration, your own or everyone's concentration, motivation, and lack of feedback. So let's delve into how to succeed in hybrid especially, and many of these things apply to all kinds of meetings, right? But what I find difficult in hybrid is forming and maintaining situational awareness. So the difficulty is that if I'm a remote participant in a hybrid meeting, I'm not necessarily seeing what's happening in the room, and it's hard for me to follow the discussion. I feel like I'm blind and I'm half deaf. It's hard for me to make out what people are discussing and who's talking right now and who is this person responding to, what argument are they making or what counter argument are they making. And it's very, very difficult for me to participate in the discussion at all. I don't know when I would speak up. It's hard for me to interrupt someone. Maybe there's no formal way of asking for a speaking turn in this meeting. So how might we deal with these issues? First, the goal needs to be really clear, right? Why am I invited to this meeting? What is the goal? What are we doing? Next, I need to find out who is here. Who are the participants? If everyone knows everyone, this isn't that big of a deal. But in many meetings, there are new participants, new people to the group, new people to the topic. We need to introduce people somehow. And we also need to find out about emotions. So it's not just about who is here. It's like which version of each person is here today. Sometimes when I join a meeting, I can bring the best version of myself. I'm feeling great. I've slept well. I'm full of energy. I'm looking forward to the day, right? And then some days when I join, I have had a bad day. Maybe I woke up after only 2 hours of sleep because of my 3-month-old baby that keeps waking me up. Maybe I broke the coffee pot in the morning and now I'm without coffee. And my day feels ruined before I even get into this meeting. So who is here and how are they? when we're face to face, we can see each other's expressions and how we're dressed and how we carry ourselves, and you can very quickly tell whether a person is in good spirits or not. But in remote, it's a lot harder to do. And in hybrid, some people have a very good connection and some people don't have a connection at all. So it's a very unequal starting point. The way of working needs to be clear. How do we ask for speaking turns? Who leads the discussion? Do we have multiple leaders of the discussion? Do we have presentations? Do we have discussions, like organized discussions? Do we use breakout rooms? There are so many ways that we can lead the meeting. What is the way of working today? And what is the focus? The goal and the focus are related, but they're not the same thing. The goal is kind of, you know, why are we here? What is the end goal? And focus is about this moment. Like, what are we talking about right now? And is right now related to the goal or not? And we have ways of maintaining focus by, for example, visualizing the discussion, such as here. I just quickly created a new slide and I wrote down a few words that I picked up from the chat. And this maybe helped focus around the, what's our shared concerns. So that's succeeding in hybrid. I have a story as well about a difficult situation I was in. This was a few years back, and how I recovered from it. So this was a discovery meeting with a new company. So I had never met these people before. It was a remote meeting, and there were 3 people on the other side, and I was alone from my company. And so when the meeting started, they said, "Sorry, we seem to be having some trouble with our video camera. We can't get it open." And there's just one laptop and 3 people and no video. And so this is kind of a nightmare for me because I'm trying to make a good impression. I'm trying to make a connection with these people, and I can't see them, and I've never met them. And it happened to be 3 women, and their voices were similar enough that it's hard for me to tell who's speaking at any one time. Okay? And I'm sure you've been in a similar situation at some point. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I have to say I was confused and I was a bit frustrated. And I just took maybe, 10 seconds or 15 seconds and said, okay, sorry, this is a bit awkward. I can't see you at all, and I don't even know who's in the room. But okay, so it was Maria who I booked the meeting with, right? Is that who's speaking right now? Yes, this is Maria. Oh, okay, great, thanks. Could you introduce me to your colleagues in the room? And when you introduce them, could they say a few words about themselves, just so I can hear your voice, and then I write down the names, and I'm like, okay, so this one and this one. So now I have a situational awareness of who I'm talking to. And then, of course, bringing this to light, that it is awkward, and saying, this is a bit silly. I'm probably on some big screen in the meeting room, right? But I'm talking to an audience that I cannot see, so this feels a bit odd. We all laughed about it, and it helped me relax. Maybe it helped them relax as well, and we were off to a good start. But if I had just tried to push through, all right, here's my presentation, and then I just quickly go through my slides, I would never have made the connection with the group. Let's talk about planning for a moment, because planning is a really big part. So when you're thinking about the goal, you're thinking about many things. Is the goal human-sized? It's not too big, it's not too ambitious, it's not something that this group will feel is out of their scope or outside of their ability. It's something that we can tackle. It's also not too small. It's big enough to be an interesting challenge. So what is a human-sized goal for this group, for this situation? Who are the right participants? Sometimes we don't get to choose the participants, but when we do, we really need to make sure that every person has a stake in the topic and every person gets a chance to speak. Otherwise, why are they there if they don't have a chance to speak? Sometimes maybe their chance to speak is just through chat. That's okay. That might be enough. And maybe you can give some people speaking turns. But how are you going to let people participate? And who are the right participants? It's not usually in meetings, it's never the bigger the better. It's just the right amount of people to tackle this topic. So sometimes the right amount is the smallest possible group, maybe it's 2 or 3 people, and sometimes you want representatives from many different parts of an organization or from many organizations, and then you need to make sure that how do we give everyone room to speak. Finally, the shared direction, that we make sure that we establish in the beginning what is the goal of this meeting, what should happen so that this is time well spent. So 3 quick tips: define the purpose or goal for yourself, write it down, put it in the invitation, give each participant a meaningful role in the meeting, a chance to participate somehow, and set expectations. So either you can give people the goal, right? So you will tell people that today this is our goal, or you can ask the group what should happen today so that our time is well spent. This depends on your relationship to the group as a leader. Are you just a leader of the meeting? Are you a leader of a team? Are you a leader of a topic, like a project manager, for example? These different roles set a different tone for how you speak to the group, but in any case, we should make sure that we have shared expectations. By the way, I'm using my phone as a timer to see how much time I have left before we need to go to questions. If you hold lots of presentations, I recommend you always have a timer and also agree in advance how long is the time you have actually to speak on a topic. And how much time do we want for that discussion? All important discussion. Okay, next up, you have a good plan, right? What about the invitation? Invitations really matter. We often get an invitation something like this. This is a caricature, of course, but there's very little information. There's very few details, and especially about my role. Why should I participate? What is in this for me? So this is my style. I like to put in a lot of details. Maybe it's too much for some people, but you find your own balance, right? What is the right balance of making it, easy to read, right? Quick, short, easy to read, but also informative. Let's break this on the right side. Let's break it down. So we want to send a promise that this meeting will be time well spent. How do we do that? Hold on. There we go. So first we want an informative title. Not just 1 word or 2 words, but descriptive title. The goal could already be in the title, right? What about the meeting purpose? Why should we gather? Why do we need this meeting right now? Or what are we starting? What are we following up on? What happened before this meeting? What's going to happen after? All of this ties into the purpose of this one session. We want to orient the participant somehow in advance. What can you do to bring your best self to this meeting? Or what can you do to help me make this the best possible meeting? For example, in trainings, I send an orientation survey. I ask a few questions. Only one of them is an open question. The others are like rate something from 1 to 5, like your ability to facilitate, for example. But it helps the participant orient themselves already before the meeting, and it gives me some information on where are people in relation to this topic. How do you prepare? Orientation is one part, but then physical, practical preparation, microphone, internet. Do you need a big screen? Can you participate from a mobile device? Can you be in a car? Can you take a walk while in this meeting? Sometimes it's really, really nice to take walking meetings, but not every topic is suitable for a walking meeting. So yeah, how do we participate? How do we prepare? When you write your invitation, you can just write it in plain text. Maybe you can use some formatted text. Maybe you can even craft a graphic flyer or do an introduction video, and then you put a link into the invitation. How engaging would that be? that you get an invitation where someone says, I'm so glad that you're taking the time to come to this meeting. We're talking about an important strategic issue coming up for our team, next year, and we've reserved a half-day session for this. What is the context? What is the purpose? What is your stake in it as the leader of the meeting? Next up is the way of working, right? An engaging way of working is disciplined, but you can be too disciplined as well. So disciplined enough, maybe. This is unfortunately the default, a series of monologues, right? It can feel like the people talking are not really in an interactive mode. They're not in a dialogue kind of mode, but we can create that dialogue mode early on and then just maintain it throughout the meeting. For example, before starting a presentation, you can throw people into breakout rooms to discuss. And now it doesn't seem like a monologue, even though most of this meeting is a monologue. It feels like you're more engaged, and I hope that when we go to questions, you have more that on your mind that you can think of more questions because you'll be more engaged with the topic. That was the goal of using the breakout rooms in the beginning. So the better option to the default, the series of monologues, is that we agree that speaking turns should be relatively short, especially the more people we have in the meeting. And if we have a hybrid meeting, maybe it's good that people say their name before speaking. Because if I'm not in the frame and you don't know my voice, maybe it's good that, hey, Jonas here, and then I say whatever I need to say, right? So saying our names, even though we're sitting in the same room, because not every participant can see us. So we're being just mindful of the remote participants as well. But this is unnatural. It's unnatural to say your name when people see who's speaking. So we have to remind ourselves and build this empathy toward the remote participants. And the meeting leader needs to remind people to slow down the discussion and say their name so that the remote participants have an easy time following and participating. Cameras on if possible, especially in hybrid meetings. It's important for my psychological safety as the remote participants that I can see what's happening in the room. And so the more cameras you can have to give context in what's happening in the physical room, the better. If you can have like a 360-degree camera, that's great. But maybe just you have a few laptops and there, as many people can fit into those camera frames as possible. That builds more. And of course, the same applies to the remote participants themselves. It's good that they have also cameras on, but it works both ways, right? If only one side has cameras on and the other side doesn't, it does not build trust. Everyone needs to have cameras on. Okay, chat and breakout rooms can really change the dynamic. Or we're just talking and talking and talking, one person at a time. It's very slow and it doesn't allow everyone to participate. It's not time efficient. So we should sometimes have everyone's opinion in the chat about a topic, pose a question, everyone answers it in the chat, then you can pick it up from there and give speaking turns to people. Or everyone talks about it in breakout groups, and when you come back, you ask each group, what did you discuss? So this can change the dynamic, engages everybody. And finally, visible real-time note-taking. So for example, I don't have a lot of time left, but I want to give a really short demo right here that if I create a new slide here, and then I hide the menus by double-clicking here, and maybe I minimize the thumbnails. So I can make as much space as possible for this. Now, as people are discussing something, let's say that someone says something about microphone use and cameras. I can see something in the chat. I can write down here that cameras should be on. And then as I interview people, I just write down what they're saying. And now we are building a shared understanding of the topic in real time so that everyone can see what the notes are. I don't have to do separate notes after the meeting. And then when I do those separate notes, I'm just trying to remember what happened, and I'm filtering, right? This is filtering through my own memory and my own biases and my own interests. And so I might not capture what the others meant. But if I'm doing it in real time so everyone can see, then they can chip in and say, hey, could you rephrase that? That's not exactly what I said. That's not exactly what I meant. Oh, okay. So what did you mean? And now we're making sure that we're understanding each other. So this also slows down the conversation, but in a good way, that it ensures that we have shared understanding before we move forward. Okay, a couple more things, and then we can move to questions pretty soon. Actually, I already alluded to this. Vary the modes of interaction, but this is a bit more concrete. So we use this framework a lot called me, we, us. And there are many other names. Maybe you've heard something called think, pair, share, or 1, 2, 4, all. They all allude to the same kind of method. It means that in order to think together effectively and to engage everyone in thinking, we have to vary this, that, there are downsides to being one big group that discusses. For example, the most senior person speaks first, and now this person anchors everyone else's thinking and limits our imagination. This is natural. The first person to speak, whether senior or not, will affect everyone else's thinking. So when you pose a question to the group, first everyone writes it down for themselves on paper or writes it in chat. But in any case, you're thinking for yourself without consulting anyone else, and now you're more independent in your thinking. The next part is that we share in small groups, because whenever the group gets larger than 6, it starts having this dynamic that you're careful about your words because you're careful about your reputation. So in order to feel more safer psychologically, we put people into groups of no bigger than 4. And in virtual, I would say even 3 people is better than 4. So then I share my ideas with 1 or 2 people, and maybe I get some feedback. If I get positive feedback, then I dare share it with the entire group. And if I get criticism, either my idea gets better or I discard it and think, all right, this is not worth bringing up in the big group. In any case, we have filtered ideas that now, when we talk with the big group, we're not wasting time on all the ideas, we're bringing the best ideas. And maybe the more introverted people, the more silent people, the more shy kind of people, maybe they actually dare bring up an idea to the whole group. Or even if they don't, maybe someone else in their group does this. I mean, we have this dynamic in our company that some people are more vocal than others. So sometimes the vocal people have been in the small group with the not so vocal people, and they can speak for them. That I heard a great idea from my colleague Mika, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was this and this. And now, if I have represented Mika's idea well, he doesn't have to comment, he just says, that's exactly what I meant, or he can correct it. But the idea came up. Otherwise, it might not have come up, because we are careful about what we say in the big group. And also, there's just not so much time when only one person at a time is speaking. It's important that we visualize at some point that what are the conclusions we draw from this discussion today. You can use PowerPoint, you can use Word, you can use Google Docs, you can use whatever tool you're comfortable with, just show it to the others. What are you writing down? Sometimes we can collaborate together on a shared document on the web, but maybe that's kind of an advanced way of working, advanced virtual collaboration already. I think this is my last slide. No matter how good our tricks are, we cannot make people engaged if they don't have space to be engaged. I found this, I don't remember where I found this anymore, but here's the source anyway. I ran into this graphic, which I think is so brilliant. Jose Torre created this kind of graphic where, I think everyone has found themselves squeezed between meetings and feeling like, when do I actually do productive work? the reality is that our calendars are full of short meetings. Often it may feel like many of these meetings don't really accomplish as much as they could. They don't account for transitioning time. So when we have physical meetings, we have to travel, even if it's just across the hall from your cubicle to the meeting room. It's still traveling physically. And when I get up, when I start moving, I start orienting myself to where am I going, who am I meeting, what's going to happen when I'm there. If I go to get coffee in the middle, or even if I go to the bathroom, there's still time for me to think what's going to happen next. And in virtual, it's just leave meeting, join meeting, leave meeting, join meeting, leave meeting. There's no transition at all, and our brains are not built for that. So could we build in some time for transitioning in those meetings? For example, just 5 minutes. 5 minutes when we begin to exchange pleasantries, ask, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How's your work week been? How's your day been today? What's the weather like? What did you have for lunch? We can talk about anything and create a connection to see which version of Jonas am I talking to today. And do we have in our calendar time blocks? If you're not already doing this, start doing it today. Start reserving time for meeting preparation. Let's say you have a 1-hour meeting that you need to lead. Maybe you need 1 hour for preparation. Block it from your calendar. Otherwise, you know you're going to do it the night before, from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. And then you're going to be tired after a long day of work, and you're not going to be very focused for it. This is the reality I've also lived in, and then I realized I need to change my habits. That's it, really. I'll leave you with this kind of what's called like a summary slide of the tips for planning hybrid meetings. Make sure you have a shared way of working. Use text and visual methods for discussion, not just talking. Make all participants visible at the start of a meeting, especially in hybrid, so we can know who's here. Make sure you have enough time for discussion in addition to presenting. And in hybrid and in remote, I think we all struggle with technical issues from time to time. And the bigger your group and the more demanding your topic is, the more technical problems you are bound to have. So to help you focus on the content, can you engage the others in facilitating the meeting? With technology, with note-taking, with breakout room management, with anything. That's going to make it a lot easier for you to focus and help everyone focus as well. Also, I have a few articles that you may want to read about. So you will get these slides afterwards. I actually forgot to talk about this with Claudio, but I'm sure we'll figure out a way to give you these slides. And I'm going to finish on this slide, and then we can go to questions. Claudio, do you want to? I haven't had any chance to follow the chat. Would you like to pick out some questions from the chat, and maybe I could answer them? What has caught your attention during this presentation?
Hi, Jonas. Well, thank you first of all for this very interesting talk, and it's brilliant to get your insight in hybrid and online meetings. Well, the chat, there is a lot going on in the chat. So I think one of the more recurring question is, or actually two things, is well, how to engage the group, and then the other part is more like technical, as in cameras, microphones, speakers.
Right.
Yeah, and well, so it's like those two streams of discussions I can see in the chat. I don't know
All
if
right.
you have thoughts about this. And then maybe we can just ask the people to raise their hand and speak up if somebody has a
That's right.
question. Yeah.
I was going there next, that if you don't have a clear question in mind, but a participant knows exactly what they would like to ask right now, please raise your hand, and I'm glad to answer your questions in speaking as well.
So in the meantime, I just wanted to say that I have learned already one thing, which is the spotlight function in Zoom for the speaker. So thank you for that, Jonas. That is very good.
No problem. Happy to help. All right. Katri has a question at least. Go ahead.
Yes, well, I'm not having a question on my own, but I noticed that there is one in the chat because I'm one of those vocal people. So,
all right. You can ask for your colleague.
Yes, Martin had a question in the chat. The larger the meeting in an online meeting, and usually online meetings are larger because you can, participate without traveling.
Right.
So, how to distinguish those, passive ones or more passive ones in an online meeting, and how to engage them? Is that correct, Martin?
Well, yes, it's nicely summarized. Well, that's like with emails. Emails, everybody is CC'd, and for online meetings, since it is so easy to participate, more people than really needed are often invited, and then people also more easily join because it's just you're just two clicks away,
Right.
and then the crowd is rather big, and you never know who is really needed for this meeting and who is just attending because, well, you were invited and you were maybe not one of the most important people in that meeting.
So it's a difficult question because it depends so much on the context. There are these informative meetings, and this webinar goes into that category, right? We're just trying to relay generally useful information, and people take from this whatever they can, right? But then when you're working on a project or you want to start something, you really need to engage people. In those cases, I would carefully consider who to invite. Try to make it more exclusive. I know everyone is talking about inclusion nowadays, but when you're preparing the meeting and thinking about who to invite, it also pays to think about why should this be exclusive? Because exclusive is the same as very, very engaging. This is a unique one-time opportunity for what? You need to define that. What can we discuss today that only this group of people can discuss? And why have we chosen this small group of people so that we can have as focused of a discussion as possible and we can learn as much as we can? Sometimes you can expand that group, but know that it always comes at the cost of feeling, if I participate in a meeting of 5, I feel important. In a meeting of 10, I don't feel so important. In a meeting of 15, I definitely feel like I can be cleaning my inbox during the meeting and no one will care, no one will even notice, which is, of course, not true, and it definitely affects the dynamic of the situation. Claudia.
I was just wondering now for right now, this meeting, so would it be good to remove your spotlight and stop sharing the screen to engage with everybody else or not?
It could. Hold on. Remove spotlight. I usually like to keep this kind of summary thing at the end for a while because it maybe helps people think of the questions as well. But there's a point after which it's better to stop sharing so we can all focus on each other better. So that's a good idea. I took that from you. Thanks. I see a question now from Claudia in the chat about in terms of timing. Well, if people travel somewhere, then what? Right. So how do we manage time? I would plan it. Here's the I think challenge with hybrid. You have to plan it twice. You plan it once for the people in room, and you plan it once for the people who are remote. Or you kind of use two different filters. When you think about your agenda, you use these both filters. What could be the best experience for the people in room? What could be the best experience for people remotely? And so what is the overlap between these two? And often it's a very, very, very thin slice of the overlap between the two. So the only way that works well for both parties is that we need to have breaks, let's say every hour for 10 minutes, or because in room we can work longer without a break, and then we need a longer break because if there are lots of people that need to use the restroom and there's a queue, you can't do a bathroom break in 5 minutes. Maybe even 10 minutes isn't enough. But then in remote, bathroom breaks can take 6 or 7 minutes, and it's manageable. So what's the optimal balance? Maybe it's we go 90 minutes and then we have a 15-minute break, and then 90 minutes and a 15-minute break, or something like that. I would also think about how do we especially include the remote participants, because they always have a harder time participating than the people in the room. So can you specifically ask for input from the remote participants? If you work in small groups, the people in room work in some small groups, the people online work in other small groups. And then when you come back together to share what you've learned, start with the remote groups. Let them bring in some more knowledge. Here may be a couple of tips that could help in making the whole day more manageable. Also, if there are people from many time zones, it's obvious we cannot have an 8-hour workshop. It never works. For someone, it's 1 a.m. For someone, it's 5 a.m. It's just horrible. So usually, if we have many time zones, we have to limit the length of the workshop, and maybe we split it into parts over multiple days. Let's see if I can spot another question.
I can re-say one, that is that how to engage the on-site participants with the online participants, because you can engage the online participants of a hybrid meeting together, with other online, and then you can also, I'm waving my hands here, sorry. Or then you can, put people in the small groups that are in the hybrid, in the on-site meeting. But how to make this connection? I think that was Claudia also tried to ask.
That's a difficult one, and I still haven't quite cracked the code for that. It depends on where your physical meeting is and if you can split the physical meeting into many rooms. So sometimes you're in an office complex and there are many empty meeting rooms, and it's trivial to split your group of, let's say, 6 people in the meeting room so that 2 people go into one room, 2 people go into another room, and 2 people stay in the original meeting room. And now you can do breakout rooms in Zoom or Teams where each group contains 1 or 2 online participants and 1 or 2 physical in the same room participants. But if you're all stuck in the same meeting room and you don't have this option, I don't know how to do that without the problem of audio bleeding. So everyone is hearing discussion from another meeting, and for the remote participants especially, it's really hard to tell who to listen to and to tune out the other discussion. You would need to have some really specialized microphones